And Democratic Congresswoman Judy Chu from California was in that group of lawmakers who got a look inside some of these migrant detention centers down in Texas. She joins me now. Congresswoman, thank you for taking a few minutes. The conditions you saw, we gave folks a sense of what you and your delegation were saying after your visit. The conditions that you saw, how much do you think those conditions will be alleviated by the passage? I know you voted against it, but by the passage of this of funding measure, this emergency funding measure for the border, do you think it will improve the conditions that you saw at these camps?
I hope it does alleviate it, but I'm really concerned because it doesn't have the provisions that we fought for, which is a minimum standard of medical care, of hygiene, of the fact that the money should be targeted to the purposes for which it was intended. These are important provisions to make sure that the money goes exactly where it is supposed to go. And I was very, very disappointed that the Senate bill passed and our bill did not pass, because we have to hold the government accountable. The taxpayers expect it.
What is your sense, the conditions that you saw, is your sense that it is more the result of, because you'll hear the case from the administration here, as we said, the 144,000 apprehensions at the border in May, that was up, I think, something like 182% year over year. It was up sixfold over 2 years ago. They make the argument that, hey, the border right now is just being flooded. These facilities are being flooded beyond the breaking point, and conditions like these, they say, tragically, are going to result from that, and they're doing their best to alleviate. That's the administration's case. How much do you think that is valid, or how much of this do you think is a result of the management directly in these facilities?
I think that the overcrowding has a lot to do with the management at these facilities. It is my understanding that at Clint, the Border Patrol station where the unaccompanied children are, that there were actual open slots at the ORR facilities where they could have been placed, but they were not placed. And as a result, they're being held for longer than the 72 hours. In reality, the processing is what is stuck right now. There are greater requirements that the administrators, the caretakers, are requiring, such as fingerprinting, such as background checks on those with whom these children could be placed. And as a result, it's delaying things. And in fact, there's really no transparency on how they are making these determinations as to whether a child can go out and be placed with that relative in the United States.
So you've called for shutting down these facilities. How would you like this? What would you like this process to be, to look like? How would you like the process to be handled for one of these children? Let's one of these children who is unaccompanied.
There are alternatives to detention, and in fact, it's less costly. But if there is proper care, then these children can be placed. And in fact, if they get legal representation, they can have their case heard in a proper way. There are nonprofits and legal entities, legal clinics that are ready, willing, and able to provide these services. In fact, we provided for funds in our version of the border bill, the bill that was just passed out, so that they could do their job even more efficiently. It's the cost-effective way to go, and it also would facilitate the movement of these children out from these facilities.
What was your assessment just of the management of the facility you saw, of the work that the border agents are doing? I know there's been some discussion today about this Facebook group, some current and former Border Patrol officers. The officers, the agents that you saw doing their jobs, do you think they're doing their best in a tough situation, or did you have concerns there too?
I was extremely disappointed to see the officials at the Clint border facility sanitizing the situation. First of all, there was a high of 700 at one point at that camp, and when we went there, it was just 25. They clearly had lowered the numbers in anticipation of our visit. And then they took great pains to show us all their supplies of toothbrushes, soap, and food. But when we asked them about the conditions that had been documented by these lawyers, they actually denied all of it. They didn't acknowledge a single bit of it, even though the lawyers had so so detailed. These toddlers were running around in shirts that had not been washed, full of snot and tears. So they denied all of it. And in fact, they pointed to toothbrushes and said they were there. Basically, it was to blame the children. They weren't using those toothbrushes.
Just to be clear what you're saying, are you saying that the folks managing and running the facility, you think, moved folks in and out before you got there, altered the conditions in some way before you got there? Go ahead.
There is something amiss when you have them claiming that there is a gigantic surge at the border, and then we get there and there's 25 children. At one time, they had 700 children in a facility that can house 106. And so we got there and there were only 25. Why? I don't know. They moved the children around. As you know, they moved the children out and then they moved like 100 of them back. So they have this capability of doing this type of thing. Now, of course, this is on top of us learning yesterday about the Facebook page of these CBP agents, which was shocking and disturbing. How could 9,500 of them belong to this Facebook page in which they laughed at the deaths of migrants and talked about throwing burritos at us Congress members because we were investigating, and then had denigrating portrayals of one of our Congress members, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? What is going on there with the Customs and Border Patrol agents? What is going on, and are they out of control?
Congresswoman Judy Chu, thank you for taking a few minutes.
Thank you.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.